coming tonight. We appreciate everyone coming here tonight. And tonight we have two special speakers, Scott and Evelyn. And we have Vince who will be interviewing them. And I'll go ahead and have him introduce them for us.
Good evening, everyone. How are you? My name is Vince Brizzolera. Yeah, you guys can't hear very well. Yeah, that may not be the greatest. Can we go halfway? Okay, they're already on it. You guys are raising my hand. Who here has come to one of these networking events in the past for the Gutierrez group? Second time, third time guests? What about first time guests? Awesome. Let's give them a big round of applause for putting this together and making this happen today. Gutierrez is here with his team, Stephanie and Vanessa. Make sure you make an introduction at some point. I have the pleasure of introducing two of our guests tonight. Scott Spear has purchased his first storage property in August of 2018. He currently owns over 12 facilities with more than 250,000 square feet of storage in 10 states with different partners. He also just mentioned he's RVing in the country, so I'm sure you'll have plenty of stories about that as well. With him today is Evelyne Ling. Evelyne Ling's diverse real estate portfolio includes 8 self-storage properties, 5 multifamily properties, and a warehouse, which demonstrates the potential for success in various elements of real estate. So please give these guys a warm welcome here. Awesome. Can you guys hear me, or are we not getting any volume back there? Not much, right? No volume. I think these are for YouTube. We'll try our best to enunciate here and make ourselves loud if we can. I'd like to start with Evelyne. Why don't you kind of give us a backstory about your experience, obviously the fashion industry, and then converting into real estate and how that's translated.
I work in the fashion industry for over 15 years. And it's just after all this time, just working my W-2, I was like, how much did I make? Like with all the money I've been saving in the bank. And I think it was about $100 with all those like little cents that I receive every month. And I was like, there must be another way. And I started to look into real estate. I came across a boot camp that was in Los Angeles. I'm like, okay, that's in my backyard. I remember it was like $197. I'm like, for 3 days boot camp, let's do it. Let's try that. I have no idea what they're gonna sell. I attended that event and that just blew my mind. They were offering a coaching program. I was like, I don't care about the cost. I just gave my credit card and I was like, I know I'm gonna make that money back. And that was the beginning of my real estate journey in January 2020, right before COVID. And I need some money to get started. So I decided to sell my house. I put my house on the market. I sold within a week. And I moved into an apartment with 2 bedrooms. I was like, so I don't have to worry about paying my bills. I was like, I should be fine. It was just that capital, and I started investing that capital passively into my own deal. So I would be a GP and also put some money in, and I also put money as a hard money lender. So I've done different things to get started because I didn't have any experience and I had to offer something to people. So I was like, hey, I have capital. And that's how I started joining some partnership, and they would have me, and it was like, but my condition to come on board is I want to learn. And this is, I got into a 10-unit small deal in Wisconsin. And right after that, it was COVID. And there was only a few deals out there, especially in multifamily, very competitive. And I have my partner that told me, what do you think about self-storage? I'm like, what's that? I grew up in France, and we don't really have self-storage. Everything you have that's extra, you just sell it. You get rid of it. So it's a concept that was not familiar for me. I was like, what is that? And I started looking into it, and I came across that show, that Storage Wars, and I was like, why would people do that? Because you can pay $100 per month in rent, and the things that you have in your self-storage is not even worth that much. But I look at the numbers, I was like, that's not possible. Really? Okay, let's try it. So we went to Baton Rouge, Louisiana. That was the first like property we were looking at. My partners and I had no experience. They were also from multifamily. They were capital raisers, and but they knew that there was a great potential in self storage, and that was the best decision we made.
What year was that?
That was August 2020.
Okay, so both of your first deals, multifamily was January 2020, and then your
So
public
we
storage
visited
was-
that property in August 2020, and then we closed on January 6, 2021. That was the first one. And then we acquired 5 more in July 2021. So there was one in Alabama, another one in Baton Rouge, so our second property, and we had a portfolio of 3 properties in Mississippi. And then last year we closed on 2 more, one in Connecticut and one in Texas. And yeah.
A lot of people here are asking about how to maybe get into self storage as an investor. Talk us through maybe a little bit more elaborate about how you got into that first deal, what it kind of took to make it happen, maybe how much capital you had to raise to make it happen.
So for this one it was a listing from a broker from Argus, and it has been sitting on the market for a while. And it's those deals that people look at it and they say, oh, maybe it's overpriced. So they pass on that deal. It was on the market for over 6 months. And we met with the seller and we're like, if he can come down to that specific price, then it would work with our underwriting. And we tried. So I think maybe it was timing. And plus it was COVID and everything was uncertain. So that's why he's like, okay, I'll take a look at your offer. We met in person, we visited the property, and he liked us. We're like, we will close this deal no matter what. And he's like, it was kind of on a handshake, and it worked.
Yeah. From a valuation standpoint, how do you look at those types of deals from like a cash flow or income base? How do you really come to the agreement or pricing for those types of properties?
So he had a price that was listed, and we just underwrote pretty much like a multifamily deal.
Okay.
But on the expense ratio, we use a lower amount. Like on multifamily, you usually underwrite about 50% expense ratio. On self-storage, we underwrite about 35% expense ratio, and also being conservative because we knew our business model was to turn this facility into an unmanned property. So that on that end, we save a lot of money on the property management, the staffing. So we were just being very conservative and having rough numbers because back then we didn't have much experience. So we couldn't say, oh, I know how much this costs or that costs.
Right.
So it was
Learn by doing.
pretty much, yes.
Right.
In terms of financing for this one, we applied for SBA loan, for which we did not qualify. I found out that if the net worth of the partners is greater than the value of the property, you do not qualify for an SBA loan. And also having no experience at all in self-storage was also very challenging. So we had to get a hard money lender on the first one. And then once you have the first one, it was much easier to get the other loans.
Absolutely. For one of our questions from the team was, do you need to come in with capital to be an investor, or can you just be someone that looks and finds the deals and facilitates the deal?
So my partners are the one that found the deal, and after that they brought me on board. And I can tell you that they did not invest 1 cent into that first deal or the first 8 deals.
Yeah.
So it's really your network, who you talk to, and who is trusting you enough to give you their money. So there's many different ways. So if you have the knowledge, if you have the time, then you can find someone you can partner with that will bring the money. And if they trust you, that you're not going to say, oh, I'm out, I don't have any money in, I can just, what they call skin in the game, it works out.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
so you don't necessarily need money. And I see a lot of young people more in multifamily that get started and they don't have money, but they have their sweat and they have their time.
Scott, I'd like to jump over to you. Yeah, what was kind of your first experience getting into real estate, and how does that translate over to just the storage?
Okay, I'm originally from Western New York, the Finger Lakes region, Rochester, New York, and that's where I was born and raised. I've started investing in real estate probably before a lot of you were even born, 1985. Got into real estate, had some rentals, built up a decent portfolio. In 2018, I had a good friend of mine, Mike Wagner. He runs a Storage Rebellion network. He got into storage, and he kept sitting and talking with me. I'm like, I'm doing the real estate thing. I'm doing good. I'm doing good. And when he spoke with me, he said, look, he goes, in residential real estate, as Evelyne mentioned, your expense ratio is about 50%. So every dollar you bring in, 50 cents of that goes towards expenses. He said in storage, it's 35%. So every dollar you're bringing in, you're keeping 65 cents. I'm like, okay, now you got my attention. What we did was we had a bunch of rentals. We sold those off 2018, 2019, got into storage, and I'm in partnerships with a lot of people. I own in a lot of different states. As far as capital to bring to the table, I have one guy, we're partners on 6 different facilities. He's brought $0 to the table, and we probably increased his net worth about $1.5 million because he's the operator. He runs them. He's very good at that. But what we've also found out is a lot of people, they want to get into storage. It's a great business. You don't deal with tenants and toilets. I love that. You know, if you're a landlord, you probably understand when you say you get that phone call on Christmas Day, hey, my furnace is out. Well, in Western New York, we get about 10 feet of snow per year. Okay, that's how much we average per year. That's one reason I don't live in Western New York anymore. When we left Western New York, I told my wife I always want to be someplace where I can wear shorts. And that's what we've been doing. We're in an RV. We travel full time. We go all across the country, and life's just really been awesome. And because of self storage, I've been able to do that. As Vincent mentioned, right now I own about 17 different storage facilities across the country, 12 different partnerships, 12 different states right now, and it just works. Self storage has been great. It's been really good for us. I got into my first deal as a piece of land. The guy needed money. It was approved for 5,200 square feet of storage, which isn't very big. It was an acre and a half. We got it approved for 13,200 square feet. And instead of developing on it, we decided to put it up for sale. We bought this property for $18,000. Went through 2 years of a painful process with a zoning board. If you've ever dealt with zoning boards, you know what I mean. It took 2 years. But we took that property, got approved for 13,200 square feet, and we sold that piece of property for $100,000 2 years later. That got my attention. So we've just been doing that ever since. So that's how I've gotten into storage.
It seems like a crucial element is having the right players in the right place. Managing the facilities must be probably one of the most challenging aspects of this. How do you guys find the right personnel or right staffing to help with that?
I'm going to yield to Evelyne. I was going to go to a different meetup, and Evelyne's like, hey, you should come to this meetup. I'm like, okay, cool. I'll come. And then it's like, can you come up and speak? I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll do that. So I'm going to yield to Evelyne. Her and I met. We have lots of mutual friends, and I know we've probably talked a couple of times, but we went in Vegas. When was that? In April? We're in Vegas? Yeah. And there was a big self-storage show there. I said, hey, I'm going to come to California. She's like, well, when you come, let's meet up. So we did. And but Evelyne, I'll let you answer that question if you want. I can answer it, but they'd rather hear from you.
So I've seen different ways of managing. For our group, we've been doing unmanned facilities, and we have a property management company that handles everything. So we still overseas, and we'll make sure that we analyze the data, we make sure that they're on top of everything, and we're in charge of all the CapEx. So it's been very easy. The rates are much lower than, I would say, multifamily. And now I just had a new offer from a different property management company. They charge $3 per unit. And they do the collection, they are the call center, they manage the tenants. So I'm like, this is a great price. Now I'll have a talk with them. I'm pretty happy with our property management company right now, but there's always a way to improve, integrate technology. So this is our choice, and we're very happy to have a third-party property management company. But I know that we have a mutual friend. Her name is Marsha. So like her, a lot of first-time operator, they will self-manage. I have another friend of mine, his name is Cameron Barsanti, and he's doing awesome by just self-managing his properties, because you can hire a VA, you can have an assistant, or someone who would take the calls. And actually, I think now that I'm looking at my experience with my property management company and their experience and how they can navigate and increase the occupancy, if I had the time, I would actually self-manage, because the self-storage, it's fluctuate. It's a business. It's not only real estate. So that's why it makes it great where you can have so many ways of creating income. It's almost unlimited. But at the same time, a business, it's something you have to watch constantly, because one day it can be 80% occupancy, and then the next month could be 70 or 60, or you're like, what's going on? Oh, you're next to a college town and everybody's leaving and don't need self-storage. Or it could be it's Christmas season, so it's very seasonal. So the pricing is almost like hotels or airlines. So we do have a software that check the prices of the nearby facilities. So we try to automate that process as much as possible. So
That's interesting, because I thought it would be very sticky business where, it's a subscription model. You don't know that you're paying your Netflix every month. You forget about your storage every month. It would be really sticky, or really, really easy to collect on that. But it sounds like it is a little bit more of an up and down cycle.
So this one, it will apply to new tenants. So on your current tenant, you do increase, and you can increase pretty much whenever you want. Mm-hmm. But in order to retain your customers, you do an increase you can do it every 3 months, 6 months. But most people are like, well, it's maybe $5 more or $10 more per month. Do I want to hire a moving company, or do I want to go through the trouble of moving everything to the facility across the town? If in the self-storage industry, the decision maker is actually the woman. She's the one that's going to drive around and say, I have all this thing, party supplies and holiday decoration and kids artwork and all that. So she's the one that's going to look for the self-storage facility. And she's the one that's going to say, okay, this is the one I pick. But after she signed and she give a credit card number, we usually don't see her. Then it's the husband that comes and have to move the things.
That's the heavy lifting that comes in,
yeah. So does the husband want to move self-storage facility every other month because they did a $10 increase? No.
What features are you adding to maybe keep tenants more engaged? Is it video, is it cameras, or some kind of technology that keeps them there? Or I guess what is it that's really attractive that way?
What we do, and we tell people, we're kind of bringing technology to storage. A lot of self-storage owners are like in their 60s, 70s, and 80s, and they do everything on index cards and all that. So we're bringing automation. So like Evelyne said, we have a call center that handles all of that. They take automatic payments. It's all on charge card or ACH. We don't take cash. We don't take checks. Now, a lot of times when we take these facilities over, people are paying cash. Here's a funny story. A lot of people who own these facilities, not a lot, but some of the people we talk to who own these facilities, they're like, I don't claim everything I make. I'm like, I understand that. That's okay. Some people take in cash. And I just say, I understand that, but I need to go by your tax returns to talk to the bank. But I can look at their P&L and I have to know how much money they're collecting. But with us, it's all automated. We automate everything. We do it through the call center. We, like I said, it's all charge cards, ACH. They all have gates. Well, I'm going to say 90% of the facilities I own have a fence and a gate, and the gate has a keypad. They pull up, they punch in their keypad, it doesn't work. They call the call center. They don't call me, they call the call center. The call center says, hey, your card was declined, maybe expired or something like that. Update your card and we'll let you in. And they can do it like that. Somebody comes in, they pay their bill, the call center will automatically let them in.
Especially if they need to get into that unit.
Yeah, exactly. And then we bring security too. We always bring security in. Like Evelyne said, a lot of females are making these decisions and they want security. So if they don't have security cameras now and you're putting it in and you can say, hey, they aren't monitored, but they record movement and stuff like that. So we always have security cameras going. The women really appreciate that. My daughter's 29 years old. I would be the same way. I wouldn't want her in a facility that doesn't have security in it. So once we add these few things, it doesn't cost a tremendous amount of CapEx, but then you can start raising up rents. If you have 100 units and you're charging $10 more a month, that's $1,000 more bottom line to your facility. So that's what we're doing. We're bringing automation is what we're doing.
So
Technology premium.
one of the major thing is lighting. Like Scott mentioned, this is very important. If your self-storage facility is not well lit at night, that's a big no. Usually that's one of the first things that we work on as soon as we acquire a property. And then you can add like those smart locks. You have the no key, for example, where you can lock and unlock your unit just with your phone. And we have also storage defenders. So it means you get a notification on your phone if someone opens your unit. So it could be like, oh, somebody broke into my unit, and they will call us, and we'll send a maintenance person or a security guard just to check. It could be sometimes very few times where it will be triggered by something that fell in their unit, and then the sensor is on. So they don't even have to move. We'll go and physically check. We also look at the cameras. Or sometimes they want to know, oh, who's there? Oh, my husband went there, and they didn't know, or they don't. So for many reasons, we do offer those kind of features as well using technology. And usually we do charge about $10 a month extra for those tech package. And we weren't sure how it would be received in all different markets, but they actually enjoy it. First they complain about the price, but they say, oh, it's actually pretty practical.
Especially when you're moving to another unit, that extra charge to move, and maybe the facility is just as expensive doing the same thing.
No.
We're kind of on the same topic of costs of running this business and running these properties. What does the insurance look like, or other kind of ancillary costs that maybe some people don't think about when they start investing in these deals?
So are you about the property insurance or the tenant insurance?
Yeah, a little bit of both. Like, what are some things to expect when you're starting that deal?
So the tenant insurance is actually something we enforce. We want all tenants to be insured. And that's actually another source of income for us, because we have about 80% of our customers that will pick our insurance. So with our property management company, we have a deal with another insurance company that they work with, and they bring into the entire portfolio. So we get 50% of the insurance cost. So if the tenant pays, it's usually $9 or $10 per month just for insurance that covers up to, I think, $4,000 on your belongings. So if they pay 10, we get 5 as our commission. So that's a great additional income. Or they could choose to have their own insurance through their home insurance. So we do have a few that have their own, but usually they don't want to think about it. And also we show them that if they have a claim with our insurance, then our insurance will pay them, and there's no increase in deductible. It won't affect their home insurance.
Yeah, now I'll talk a little bit about the insurance on the facility. One thing I just want to back up a little bit too with automation. A lot of these current self-storage owners, they have like an office, and they have like office staff and all that who sit there all day. I can't imagine what they do. They must be on Facebook all day. I can't figure it out. And they're paying these people like $50,000, $60,000 a year to sit there. One of the things we do with the automation, the call centers, we don't need that person there. So that's a bottom line savings for us. But on the insurance is a tricky thing with this business. I've been finding that out owning in different states. If you're within 5 miles of a coastline, you're going to pay a premium for insurance. We had one facility, it's in Singing River, Mississippi. Current owner is paying $6,000 a year for insurance. So we put that in our pro forma for expenses. Well, we started getting insurance quotes, and we got insurance quotes up to $38,000. We called the insurance company they have, like, hey, we'd like you guys to insure this. We saw insurance about $6,000. They said, yeah, we're not going to renew that policy. It's going up to $16,000. What we settled on was we're paying $18,000 a month, or a year. I'm sorry, $18,000 a year. And bottom line, that's a big expense. That's a $12,000 a year expense. So you have to be careful of that. There's flood zones, there's all that. But I have a good insurance guy I work with. And that's what you want in this business, and like in real estate and anything. You want your trusted advisors. I have an insurance guy. I work very closely with him. I send him quotes I get from other companies. There's been times he's told me, he's like, I can't beat that. He goes, that's a good policy. It's good coverage. Take their insurance. But in other cases, he'll come and say, yeah, their insurance is cheaper than mine, but their deductible is $100,000. Mine is 20. So, but insurance, we usually budget between $3,000 to $6,000, depending on how big the facility is. A year is about what we budget for.
And you want to make
property
sure
insurance.
you contact your lenders first, because you can sign up for the insurance and they will say, no, actually, we had requirements and you need to have $2 million aggregate deductible and this and that. So we always ask the lender first, what are your insurance requirements? Then we start shopping for insurance, and make sure that you have that. We had to learn it the hard way, where you contact just one broker. That you like, you can interview as many as you want, but once they start shopping, then if they get a quote from like Minico, for example, they're locked in. So it means another broker can't get a quote from Minico. And so you're stuck. If you want to go with Minico, you have to go with that broker. Even if he turned out to be not a nice person and you say, I don't want to deal with him, you're stuck. So we thought first that, I started asking my friends in real estate. It was like, do you have a good broker? They say, oh, yes. And then I was like, okay, I have 3 or 4 different brokers. I reach out to them all at the same time, and they start actually getting quotes from all the same insurance companies. And that put me in trouble, because then they would come back and say, well, I tried to get that quote, but you already had a lock on it for your property. And then I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. And then I felt really bad, because they wasted their time, like putting the proposal together, getting a quote from the insurance. So lesson learned. So now we stick with one broker and sometimes a second one. But I would ask first, what companies did you send a request to? And then I will make sure I have the list of the insurance companies, then tell the other brokers, we already have a lock on those ones, so you can contact any other company you want. So that was something that we had to learn the hard way.
It's not the sexiest thing to talk about, but
Yes.
I think it's a crucial element to any home purchase. And it's a big thing that's affecting us here in California with the fires and now floods and things like that. So we're definitely subject to that. I kind of wanted to move forward here a little bit to what we're thinking moving forward as far as potential investments in different parts of the United States. Is there areas, geographical areas that you guys are interested in? And what does that look like from an investment standpoint?
I think because of our business strategy, because we do unmanned facilities and our call center can just handle calls from all over the US. So that's why my facilities are all spread out. And we really look at the numbers, at the market, but I wouldn't say, oh, I only want properties in Texas. I'm actually have one in Connecticut, Texas, Alabama, Louisiana. So it's really depending on the deal. And that's why it works with our business model. So we don't have a specific market. But we always look for a property that has room for expansion. So if they have additional land, this is what we love. Then if our facility is doing great, then we will build on it. And this is what we're planning to do in Mississippi, because we have 3 more acres. So the property came with 2 acres, and then we just bought the nearby land for like $18,000.
Yeah, it's same here. We're not really market specific. One thing that we're starting to see a little bit is sometimes you take our new facility and you kind of say, okay, I'll have 3 to 4 move-ins a month. So you kind of, I guess, future that out. Say, okay, if I have 3 to 4 move-ins a month, this is where I'll be revenue-wise. We've backed that down to like 2 to 3. The reason is, with inflation and all that, people only have so much money they can spend. All that money is either going towards food, gas, groceries, medical. It's taking care of the necessities. The storage is a secondary thing. When they have extra income, mama wants the garage clean, so you have to get everything out of the garage or moving to self-storage. We're starting to see a little bit of a trend of people not moving in. So the move-ins are not, we're kind of future casting them a little bit lower than we used to. But market-wise, we're pretty good in any market. People like, I am looking at storage facilities in California. People across country are like, you're nuts. It's really expensive there. It is, but a 10 by 10 in California rents for $250 a month. A 10 by 10 I own in Alabama rents for $70 a month. It's all relative. So that's why I'm not too afraid to buy in any market if the numbers work and if there's a demand.
Do you guys try and track where people are moving to? I think from where jobs are and where the trend is for people leaving California, does that affect your?
We do, and I mostly look at properties in tertiary markets. So the primary market, that would be like the big cities like LA, New York, and the secondary one are still the big metropolitan area like Austin, Houston. So those one are usually dominated by all the REITs, all the big one, Public Storage, and so we look at the smaller cities, but that still have an airport, and those ones still have. The great part about self-storage is it's still owned at almost 80% by mom and pop.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And so many facilities I visited, I was like, we do mystery shopping just to kind of know their occupancies. I was like, I'm looking for something for my mom, and how many 10 by 10 do you have? And she's like, go in the bag, get the sheet of paper. And I was like, do you have a computer? Can you print that out?
She'll fax that to you.
Yeah, I'll fax it to you.
Pretty much. And actually, you still have a lot of facilities that have no technology. You have an old couple living at the facility in the apartment. So there's a lot of potential still and a lot to be done with self-storage.
You mentioned public storage and some of these bigger REITs. Do they dominate maybe these larger metropolitan areas, leaving that door open in those tertiary markets? Or do you think they're starting to creep out into some of those suburban areas as well?
We're starting to see them.
Shocks me, by the way. That's crazy.
We're starting to see them come into the secondary markets. Yeah. They don't really come down into the tertiary markets, which is great. But they are coming into the secondary markets because they're so dominant in these, like the LA, New York City, those type cities. They're so dominant. They're starting to come to those secondary cities, like you said, Austin, Houston. So we are starting to see that. In my opinion, you kind of drive around and you're going to see extra storage. You're going to see some of the big REITs in places. But you're still going to find those mom and pops and pockets that have like a 20,000 square foot facility. They're way under market rents. And you can go in, what you're doing, they don't know what to do. They're like, I want to sell this, but I don't know how to. And then you just come in and say, hey, what do you want for it? A lot of times people tell me what they want for it. I'm like, that's a deal. We'll send you the contract. So that's what we're doing. But there definitely is people moving Tennessee, South Carolina, North Carolina. We see people moving there. So we do look at that a little bit, but for me, it's more working on making some money.
It's an ancillary thing that you guys are looking at, it sounds like. Yeah. One last question, and I'm going to open up to the floor here in a minute as well. But you mentioned coming into existing deals, like you just said, or developing deals. I guess from an experience standpoint, what do you guys like and prefer? And for someone that's a new investor, what would be maybe a better option out of the two?
Okay. What I look at like the hybrid, like Evelyne mentioned. I like to buy those existing facilities that are cash flowing, they're making money, but they have room for expansion. There's 2 extra acres sitting there. You can get the existing facility up and running. You can get the market rents up to where they need to be, and then you can start expanding on the land that you have there. I haven't done a ground up development yet. In other words, buy a piece of raw land, build it, develop it, fill it up, and sell it. I haven't done that yet, and I might, but to me, it's a long time frame. You're borrowing that money, you're having to pay on that money. It takes 2 years to get these things built up, ramped up, depending on zoning. So I tend not to do that, but I do know people that do that. And don't get me wrong, they'll buy a facility, land, and everything. They're into it for $1 million once they get it ramped up, and they're selling it after about 3 years for about 1.5 million to 2 million. So they're kind of doubling what they got into it. But it was a long lead time, and I'd rather buy a hybrid. So what about you, Evelyne?
So lately I've been looking at conversions. So that's why we acquired a warehouse. So right now on my bio, I have a warehouse, but it's actually a warehouse for a self-storage conversion. So it's in White Bear Lake, just outside of St. Paul in Minnesota. And we just had to wait because like it's a seasonal market. It was filled with like boats and cars in the warehouse, and we still had a couple of leases that were until 2023 and some until 2025. So we're going to do in several phases, and that is actually pretty great because we use the shell. We don't have to do anything to the structure. It already has AC. It's a Class A warehouse. So we're just going to do the little partition, adjust the lighting to make sure it goes with the aisle. It's fairly easy, and it's a fast conversion. Usually conversion takes 3 to 4 months. It's already zoned for industrial warehouse, so it's very easy to get the self-storage. You don't have to go through a whole zoning process. So this is something that a lot of, I know, investors out there are looking for, or they would look for those big box store like Walmart and Target. So they vacated or they didn't renew the lease, and they would convert those because the structure is, this is what's the most expensive. It's all the civil engineering and building that structure or building the elevators. This is what's the most expensive development. So that would be something, a way between acquiring a property and doing full-on development. Yeah.
Seems like we lost a lot of big lots around here. I mean, that might be an opportunity.
Yeah.
One or two quick things that you guys think are really important for new investors to get started and get the ball rolling that we may have not talked about tonight that's important.
Network. I would say that was number one, because now I have a lot of friends in the self-storage space and I'm part of some mastermind. Then anytime I have a question, I can just ask, I can just reach out, and that saves me money and time, but especially money, because I'm like, I'm looking for a software. Who would you go with? And people are very open and would share very openly. Oh, I tried this one and this one. It didn't work out for me. Go with that software or property management company. I was like, or what happened? And they would tell me, oh, they made quite a big mistake, or the occupancy dropped since we signed up with them. I was like, okay, thank you. Then I don't have to go through all that. So a lot of it was through networking and talking to the right people, even about construction, zoning, who do you use, how do you get that, lenders, because when we started in 2020, self-storage was not as sexy as it is now. So when you would go to a traditional lender with self-storage, you say, I have a self-storage property and I would like to get financing. And most lender was like, I don't know how to underwrite that. I don't know, what is it? But now it's different. A lot of lenders and investors are like hearing self-storage, mobile home park, and all this. Now, even lenders, even from small credit union, they say, okay, give me your deal. I'll finance it.
That's great.
Yeah, we're finding, from what I've seen, self-storage has the lowest foreclosure rate out of any business, even residential real estate. Foreclosure on self-storage is the lowest because it just works, it operates. For new people, you don't have to have money to get into self-storage. But just like any real estate deal, if you find the deal, you're going to find the money. You're going to find the people to network with. Storage, the thing I really love about storage is the networking aspect of it. We all share information like crazy. We're competitors. We might be going up against the same unit. But honestly, if I find out Evelyne's looking at a facility, already dealing with a seller, I'll back out. I don't want to compete with her. That's just my take. And a lot of people on our storage network and the masterminds and stuff, that's what we're like. We just, oh, you're already working, I'm not going to do it. I did have one guy, I was in Virginia for a while, taking care of my wife's parents for a little bit. And I was looking at a facility, and I'm talking to the owner. He goes, well, yeah, I'm already talking to Andrew Leadham. Well, I know Andrew Leadham. I called up Andrew. I said, hey, dude, I know you're looking at this facility. I'm not going to move forward with it because you're already looking at it. He's like, well, do you want to partner up on it? Yeah, sure, let's partner up. So we cooperated. Instead of competing with each other, we cooperated, and we're both winning on that thing. And that's the thing. But yeah, don't feel like you have to have money to get in self-storage. If you find a deal, or if you're willing to put in, as Evelyne said, the sweat into it, you'll do well. You'll do okay in self-storage. It's really networking. And I've been in a lot of real estate businesses and B2B sales and stuff like that, where it's, it's like, shark eats shark in there. Mm-hmm. In self-storage, everybody, from what we've seen, everybody really competes and helps each other. That's what I love about it.
That's great. And we're fortuitous to have you come along as a +1 or an add-on to Evelyne tonight. But it's because of the networking that led to that, so that's really great to hear. Do you mind if we field some questions?
Yeah, go ahead.
Right here.
So, since you deal with a lot of older people that run the self-storage, do you ever do owner financing?
That's one of the first questions I ask them, in my opinion, especially now when interest rates are like 3% on storage. Seller financing, we weren't going after as much, but now that interest rates have increased, and you probably have seen it, 8-10% interest on commercial properties, we're asking a lot of seller financing questions, and a lot of sellers like, you know what, I like the monthly revenue, and so yeah, the conversation's been pretty good. A lot of seller financing deals, they want to be like 5%. They know they're going to get 0.5% with all the money they're going to put into the bank. We show them how they're going to save on capital gains if they seller finance. And so we've had a lot of people do that. I do have one deal right now where the guy wanted a higher price than I wanted to pay for it, but we talked about seller financing. I said, how about if I make these payments to you, for over 20 years? He's like, okay, that'll work. It's 0% interest. Okay. It drove my wife crazy. She's like, why are you overpaying for a facility? I'm like, because we're getting great terms. Every payment I make is a principal payment to this guy. They like that monthly revenue. They're kind of used to it. They're going into retirement. They don't want, $1 million in the bank, but they like getting $5,000 a month. How about you, Evelyne?
Yeah, it's all about educating the seller, because they also have tax advantages where they don't have to pay a big chunk of tax right away as soon as they close. So I think they like that, but I don't have any seller financing. I know this is what everybody is looking for right now, whether it's self-storage or multifamily. If you have a deal, you want to make sure that you get seller financing, especially right now with the rate. But we've been having great lenders like CMBS loan. So for us, we never had that opportunity to do seller financing, but if they're open to it, then yeah, that's much better than having to deal with the lender, because the lenders, you have to make sure, they're the more sophisticated the lender, the more rules you have, like reporting. And if you fall below a certain occupancy, they can take over. If they think you're not performing well enough, then they could take over the operation and say you're out. So you don't have that issue with seller financing. And also, because the seller, he want to make sure he gets his monthly payment. So he'll make sure that he hands you a good facility. Yeah. And if you need help ever, they usually step in and help you.
Yeah, another thing I'll add too is a lot of facilities I buy, they're underperforming, I'm going to say. So we get private financing. I have a number of private lenders that I deal with. We pay 8 to 10% interest. We figure that into the number. We borrow that money for typically 2 years. So we're buying a facility for, let's say, $500,000, but we know in 3 years it's going to be worth $800,000. We'll borrow the people's money for 2 years. We're either going to sell it within 2 years, or we're already talking to the banks to refinance it. And then we go to the bank and say, hey, it's worth $800,000. Will you give us 80% of $800,000? We pay off our lenders. They're happy. They got 8 to 10% interest along the way. They can't wait to loan us money again on the next facility. So that's the thing. When Evelyne talked about your network, also talk to people about private financing. You want to build that network, because when the deal comes, you want to have the cash ready.
Do the banks provide similar interest rates to what private lenders are doing? Or is there a discrepancy there?
A little bit of a discrepancy. Typically, banks are a little bit less. SBA loans, I was talking to an SBA lender the other day. He said they're 10% interest on SBA loans. That's a lot. Yeah. Some local banks, we usually try to go to a local bank, because local banks are running right about 6.5% to 7% now. Yeah, I'll pay my private investors 8 to 10% interest while we're ramping this property up, and I make monthly interest payments to them. And then I'll go over to a bank, and if a bank sees a performing asset and it's self-storage and it's in their neighborhood, like, yeah, we'll loan you money. How much do you want? Right.
So there's also timing. So when you have a property on the contract, the clock is ticking. So if you go to a bank, they will give you a term sheet. And then maybe at the end, they would say, just before closing, a week before closing, they said, no, we can't hold that rate. And they change the terms, or they ask you for additional documents. I'm sure you guys know that. Like, oh, your insurance is not right, or get me another insurance. We can't close on time, or you. So it's always a hassle, but with With a private lender, usually if they like your deal, they say, okay, I'm in, I'll finance. So it's mostly more straightforward.
We do one more question. Yes, ma'am.
How do you find these mom and pop independent ones in these tertiary markets?
How do you find mom and pop?
So you do have some software, like we use Radius Plus, that will list all the facilities, or you can just go, if you don't want to pay for it, then you can just go on Google Map and you select an area and you type self-storage facilities. And I do a lot of my shopping like that, where I just look at them and it was like, oh, that looks like it's small enough, and I just call. Or if I'm looking at the property, for example, I was in Montgomery, Alabama, then I would look at that property and I will look at all the properties within 5 miles radius. First, to check the competition, and second, maybe there's another property we could acquire. So the best is always to go, if you can, and visit. And that's when you talk to people, and that's when you find a lot of information. Because people, they're very lonely working at a self-storage facility because you don't have so many people coming in. So when you go and you say, hi, how long you've been working here? Or when do you have like more tenants, or when is the best rate? You don't say when you have more tenants, but you ask question where it's like, when can I get the best rate? Or when do you have promotion? And she's like, oh, promotion are usually in the low season, and this is like October to February. And you're like, oh, okay. And it's like, do you have more units available? Because I need to make up my mind. I need to talk to my mom, or I need to talk to my husband. And it was like, oh no, you need to make a decision right now because I only have one of those left. And they will tell you the history of the property. You can get so much more information from them. So we always like to come up with a story. And one time, it was in Louisiana in August 2020, there was a hurricane just before. So we got a rental car, and when we went to that, we ordered online. And then when we went to the airport to pick up our car, they said, sorry, there's no more cars because every car has been used by FEMA. And we're like, so what do we do? So we use Uber to go around. And then we're like, yeah, but that's not practical. You can't call Uber every time. So we decided to get a U-Haul truck, the cheapest one that they got. And then we were visiting the facilities. We didn't even think of it. But when they saw us with that small U-Haul truck, they were like, hello, what do you need to know?
That's a great
Is there
idea.
stuff in the back? Yeah.
Yeah. That's a whole new thing. I never even thought of that. I'm going to start doing
Oh,
that.
they thought we were
Yeah.
like gonna move in like right away.
Yeah.
$17 a day rental for you.
Exactly. What I tell people, I speak at different storage events too. What I tell people is like, you're the local person, okay? Just drive around. You're going to be surprised now that it's almost like when you buy a car, like you buy a Jeep, also it's like, oh my God, everybody's driving a Jeep. No, the same amount of people were driving a Jeep before, you just noticed. It's the same with self-storage. When you start driving around, you're going to see self-storage facilities that maybe aren't managed the way they should be, okay? Go in and talk to those people. They want to sell to somebody local. When I call, my phone number pops up, New York. They think I'm calling from New York City. I live 7 hours from New York City. Okay, I live rural New York is where I grew up. Now I live everywhere. I'm down at San Onofre right now, right on the beach. That's where we're camping at. But go in and talk to these people. They want to sell to somebody local. Okay, they'll tend more to seller finance somebody who's local. They want to help somebody who's local. So therefore, like when you buy the facility, they're going to check in with you often and say, hey, how are things going? You know, did Billy Bob pay his rent this month? No, he didn't pay. Well, I'm going to call Billy Bob for you and get him to pay. If you're in a local market, go talk to the owners there. I can't stress enough how much they want to sell to somebody local. And if you have family and friends somewhere, go visit with them for a while and then go visit the facilities around there. You can say, hey, I'm here local, want to look at your facility. When you start making phone calls and stuff, it works. But trust me, when you walk in, like Evelyne said, when you walk in, it's a whole different conversation with those people.
Thank you both so much for your time and your experience sharing everything today. We appreciate the conversation, and we hope to talk to you guys very soon. So thank you again.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight. And we would also like to announce our next guest speaker for next month, We'll be doing it June 13th, and we'll be learning from Nick Venuto, who is the #1 top lender in the nation. And he originated in 2022 over 100 million in loans. So make sure you come over on June 13th. We'll be learning from Nick.
Nice to meet you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Yeah, great questions.